Hi, this is Fatima. Here let us implement the service registration methods what we have discussed in our previous video. This is an ASP.NET Core web application we have created already with simple empty project template. Let us use this example in order to understand the different methods of registering a service. Or AddSingleton, AddScoped Addtransient, and these are the methods that we use to register a service that will determine the lifetime of that service. AddSingleton, the service is created only once and used everywhere. If we used AddScoped, it means the new instance is generated for every scope and each request is a scope. Within the scope, the service can be reused. If we use AddTransient, a new instance is created every time you create a service. Let us add the three interfaces, one for each lifetime provided by the ASP.NET Core. If you see here, I already added the three interfaces, one for scope lifetime, one for singleton, and one for transient. This interface is very simple. If you see the code, it contains a single method getID which must return a unique ID. Also, I created a service which implements all these three interfaces: iTransient service, iScoped service interface, and iSingleton service. And this service generates a unique ID whenever it is instantiated and returns that ID in that getID method. Now let us look at each service lifetime in detail. Now under this configure service of the startup class, we are registering the service via iTransient service and the service via iScoped service and the service via iSingleton service. Let me uncomment these three lines. And let us open this home controller in which we are going to inject the 6 instances, 2 instances per each interface in the constructor of the home controller. And let me create a private field to store this service instance. Press Ctrl period to include the private field. So now we have injected 6 instances, 2 instances per each interface in the constructor of the home controller and created a field to store the service instance. Let us query the getID method in each instance and return it as a JSON result. So in order to return the JSON result from this action method, let us change the return type as JSON result, return JSON, create a new object, remove this, with these changes in place. Now let's run the application. You will see these two IDs are different for the transient first instance and the transient second instance, because it is evident that we have received 2 new instances of the transient service. And if if you see the scoped first instance and scoped second instance, the instance is created only once per request. So the same IDs are generated. If you see, the quit or same here. But now if we hit the browser refresh button, then this IDs changes because the new instance is created for every request. Before we hit the browser refresh button, let us see the singleton first instance and singleton second instance result also. If you see these IDs of the singleton first instance and singleton second instance, these IDs generated are same and will not change even if you refresh the application. So now let us hit the browser refresh button. The scoped first instance and scoped second instance IDs should be generated newly, but the singleton first instance and the singleton second instance IDs should be the same. Now let us hit the refresh button. Now you can see the scoped first instance and scoped second instance IDs are newly generated for the another request, but the singleton first instance and the singleton second instance IDs are same as previously. But for the transient first instance and transient second instance, you will get a new IDs always. So which one to use? These transient services are safest to create as you always get the new instances. But since they are created every time, they will use more memory and resources and can have the negative impact on performance if you have too many of them. So we have to use this transient lifetime for lightweight service with little or no state. The scoped service is a better option when we want to maintain the state within a request, and the singleton service is created only once and not destroyed until the end of the application. So any memory leaks in the service will build up over time, and hence watch out for the memory leaks. The scoped service is a better option when we want to maintain the state within a request. The singletons are created only once and not destroyed until the end of the application. So singletons also memory efficient as they are created once and reused everywhere. So we have to use the singleton where we need to maintain the application wide state. For example, application configuration or parameters, logging service or caching of data is some of the examples where we can use these singletons. We should be careful while injecting a service into the another service with a different lifetime. The services with a lower lifetime injected into the services with a higher lifetime would change the lower services lifetime to higher lifetime. This will make the debugging application very difficult and should be avoided at all the cost. So we should remember some of the points. We should never inject the transient and scoped service into the singleton, and we should never inject the transient service into the scoped service. Hope you enjoyed this video. Our next video is about controllers in ASP.NET Core MVC. Thank you.